This is Dr. Disco. So we have arrived at the first half of the Zygon two-parter, the Zygon invasion. Oh boy. My memory of this two-parter was that part one had a lot of problems and part two basically picked up the slack and fixed most of them. We'll see whether that second part holds true, but definitely I was accurate in that the first part is actually not great. There's a lot of problems, mostly structural with this. The core concept is sound, and I was debating whether to talk about the allegory aspect of this in here or in the next video. I'll talk about it here, and if I have any new thoughts about it, I'll do it in the next one as well. But there's solid groundwork. There's a lot of good ideas, but there's a lot of botched execution and some really not very good moments in this. So this is the one that basically picks up from the end of the Day of the Doctor. And we deal with the outcome of the ceasefire that was established at the end of that episode, which that's a good thread to pull on. If you're going to do a follow-up, especially on that story, that's a good one to do because we were left in a situation where there's a ton of Zygons on Earth. What happened to them? How did that work? Well, we kind of find out a little bit in this one. We don't find out everything. We find out a bit more in the next episode as well, but that's a solid starting point. And then we have the idea that there are there's basically a small rebellion within the Zygon populace. So you have radicalized Zygons who are not okay with the fact that they have to hide who they are. And they are prepared to go to war with humans and to try and force other Zygons to join them if they aren't willing to do so in order to be able to be seen freely as themselves, even though this is in violation of the terms of the ceasefire. So, you know what? Let's touch on the allegorical element of it. It seemed very obvious at the time, and I still believe this, that the intended allegory was that of radical Islam, radical Muslim elements, you know, that whole thing, because that would have been more contemporary to the era. I will say, though, and I'll probably drill into this a little bit more next time, this shows a pretty decent understanding of radicalization in a way that spreads out from specifically having to be an allegory for Muslim extremists in particular. It has an understanding of radicalization in terms of how it works, what drives people to do it, how they try and recruit from within, the things they do to cripple the structure within their populace so that those who remain will turn to them in the absence of the leadership that was there previously. It understands very well a lot of the elements at play in an attempt of a radical minority to try and radicalize the rest of their contemporaries and the populace to their ends, either by declaring them traitors to their kind or by getting them on board. It understands this pretty well. And again, even though I strongly suspect it was specific to Muslim extremists at the time, it understands it well enough that it is broader. It can be interpreted and can easily be applied to any kind of extremism that I could think of, just sort of taking the basics and sort of pasting it on various radicalized groups. I'm like, no, this tracks. So that's really solid, that whole thing. Sort of backing up a little bit, I like that the first we see of the Doctor is just jamming on the guitar in the TARDIS. I know some people don't like the guitar and they don't like the sunglasses, they don't like the hoodie. Like, I like all of it, and part of what I like about the guitar specifically is it's sort of a sideways step of something that I always imagined the Doctor doing. And I've talked about this before, which is that I always kind of pictured the Doctor when he's bored, sitting in the TARDIS and just fiddling with the sonic screwdriver and adding new features to it, new abilities to it. And this kind of feeds into that same thing. It's like, it's just sitting around, got nothing to do. I'll fiddle with this. It's just, instead of fiddling with the screwdriver, which is my headcanon, to be fair, he's fiddling around with the guitar. So watching him do that that totally tracks for me. So that I do like that. And also we get the first introduction of the idea of Dr. Disco, which is a little cringy, but like he keeps trying these various things and he's trying puns and none of it's working. And I kind of like that. They're dad jokes. This particular series kind of is the midlife crisis of the 12th Doctor. And moments like this, while I may not love them in a vacuum, I do actually appreciate them as part of his overall arc over his 3 series that he did. So I need to start talking about some of the stuff that doesn't work. A lot of it has to do with the specific execution of some stuff involving the Zygons. First off, there's what is admittedly a nitpick, and it's something that could be leveled against a lot of similar stories. Like, I could easily level this against something like Stranger Things or a bunch of other stuff, but it still always bothers me when it comes up. This massive network of underground tunnels that could not have been entirely pre-existing if for no other reason than they had to make all these modifications to the elevators in these buildings to be able to go further down than they're supposed to. How did they do that and nobody noticed? You know, underground excavation is not exactly a silent, stealthy operation. So, you know, secret underground tunnels when we have no cover story for when these could possibly have been built, and especially with the Zygons, like they've got these things all over London, like, yeah, no. But again, admittedly, that's a little bit nitpicky. Somewhat more substantive. So the whole standoff in this town between UNIT and the Zygons. Oh my God. I hate this scene so much. And I hate the lead up to it, all of it. So they do account, there are lines to account for why they are able to take on the forms of loved ones of these individual soldiers. There's a line about they can pull the memories from your mind and appear as anything they want. They only need to preserve the body in order to get more information about somebody and really get into their memories and whatnot. And that's a little bit of a shift from what we've normally seen from Zygons. My first question is, wait, are you saying they're psychic now? Because you're saying they're plucking memories out of people's head? Fine. Whatever. But the whole thing starts, it was going to start with a bombing run of some kind, and the person who was supposed to pull the trigger doesn't, because 2 Zygons appear on the door that look like her husband and child. Now, I don't doubt that the Zygons would use this tactic. It makes sense. What makes no sense to me is she's miles away. How the hell did they know who was at the controls of that thing? How did they know whose family to appear as? There is no covering for that. It's like, wait, did they just randomly pick a unit member? Boy, hope it's this one. We're your family? Could have been somebody else at the controls going, that's not my family. Boom. So there's that. And then there's the actual showdown with the guy who's heading up. He's not really the head because the head is off around the corner, and actually in a way where the geography makes absolutely no flippin' sense. But that's not even worth getting into because it's far from the thing's biggest problem. But he goes through this whole thing where he's seeing his mother, and there's this whole back and forth where he's like asking her questions she doesn't know the answers to. Now, look, here's what I will grant. Appearing as someone's loved one is a good tactic for delaying a snap decision. If you're going to appear as someone's loved one, their natural instincts of protecting the people they care about are going to kick in. They are going to delay. They're going to stall, and that gives you an opening. So that I totally buy. What I don't buy is this prolonged conversation. You know you're dealing with shapeshifters. And yeah, this mother gives this answer of, oh, they kidnapped us and took us here. How did they know who was coming? Just think for 2 flippin' seconds.
How stupid do you think I am?
And you're telling me, and here's the other thing. If it was just that one idiot soldier, okay, fine. People can be done. But he had like a dozen people behind him. You're telling me not one of these trained soldiers, specialized unit trained soldiers, that gets established because they can't call in the normal army because the entire thing of how the Zygons are integrated is limited only to unit staff. So these are not normal soldiers. These are unit specific, trained to deal with alien situations. Not one out of the dozen or so of them that are there with guns thinks, no, this is a bad idea. And they all go in. Every last one of them goes into this church. Bull. Absolute bull. Again, the core idea of stalling them by appearing as their family, that's fine, but they drag it out into this prolonged scene, and it just, the level at which it works, if it, to whatever degree it did work, just keeps dropping steadily the longer the scene goes on, and it just drags forever. There's also a bit of idiocy involved in Kate's subplot because, okay, a couple of things here. The first is it's really badly paced. Not in a vacuum, not in terms of what she does and the rate at which she does it, but the points at which that is sprinkled across the rest of the episode. Because she basically just goes to a town, meets one cop, realizes stuff has happened, and then the cop turns out to be a Zygon. That's like half an hour of real time, 45 minutes maybe, worth of stuff. But they keep cutting back to her and cutting away from the much more intensive stuff for her to be bumbling around this town learning F all. She doesn't learn anything of significance while she's there. And the points at which we keep cutting back to her just don't flow worth a dang. And then with the cop, like, was the cop always a Zygon? Because if the cop was always a Zygon, why? Why talk to her at all? Why prolong this? Like, there's a toss-off line with the cop being like, oh, I had to be sure you didn't have backup coming. Why? Why did you have to be sure of that? If you're planning to kill her regardless, even if you think backup is coming, kill her now and leave. Like, what was the point of going on for 45 minutes, an hour, showing her the evidence of the crimes you've committed? Why? What are you doing? We also get another really awkward insertion of the whole hybrid concept, because that gets brought up as a concept when talking about Osgood. Now, I will touch on Osgood. I like Osgood being back. I liked Osgood as a character. I like her use here. And just in case I forget to address it later, let me be very clear. The Osgood that survived is human. Like that. She is. Now, I'm not going to do a whole thing debating, like, and some people would be like, well, where's your evidence? Well, if you want one piece of evidence, next episode, her specs break, and since if she's a Zygon, her clothes are part of her body, they shouldn't be able to fall off and be able to break. But even setting that aside, there's a meta reason why she has to be a human, because the whole intention of the balance between the two Osgoods is that there's one human and one Zygon. And at the end of the next one, there's two Osgoods again, and we know one of them is Bonnie. So the other one has to be human, because otherwise, that's two Zygons. That's not balance. That's not the plan. That's not what is supposed to happen. And yes, that's a meta reason, and I can't cite a ton of evidence, but like, it's the same reason why the question of would the Flash beat Superman in a race is stupid to me. Of course the Flash would win. He has to win. He's the fastest thing in that universe. That's the point of him. So it's not about tracking their powers. He has to win because that's what he is. This Osgood has to be human because we know the other one later is a Zygon, and there has to be a human and Zygon for the balance. That's what they are. So if you ever wondered, that's your answer. There you go. But it is nice to have her back. And I like her interactions. We get a little bit more of that in the next one. Trying to think you know what? I did like the twist that Clara was converted at a point that we didn't see. I like that they account for when it happened. I like that they gave her like this second, sort of second in command in unit under Kate, who is traveling around with Clara. And she would be the obvious one, like, oh, look, the person at unit who we've never seen before and is right next to the companion's gonna turn out to betray them. Oh, no, it's not, because the companion's actually, oh, okay, like, that was good. And that works largely because there is the misdirect of this other woman being right there, and you're like, well, obviously she's a Zygon. Oh, okay. Nope, fair dues. So that was clever, and that worked. I think that's about all I've got. Like I said, it's not awful. It's a good core concept, and it shows good understanding of radicalization and the way that it happens. But like, there's some massive problems with this, and some specific scenes that are just like, ugh, stop. So that's the Zygon invasion. Let's see if the next one holds up as well as I remember it doing. In the meantime, if you wish to support me and this channel, there is a link to my Patreon that keeps the lights on around here. And in addition to that, there's the usual stuff that also helps me out. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Whatever your thoughts on this episode or my review are, drop them down in the comments and let's talk about it. And until next time, this council is adjourned.